Hello and welcome back to Mythical Creature Comforts. First, I am sorry we did not post about mermaids last week. I was sick. I sounded like a man. It was awful. We're moving on. So this week, we're talking about mermaids. Are they my favorite? No, but they're right up there. So, mermaids. For those who don't know, because they've lived under a rock, a mermaid is most often depicted as a young, beautiful female from head and torso, and from the waist down, she's fish-like. The argument could be made more sea serpent than fish, but we're going with fish. Now, the mermaid is one of those fun creatures that doesn't have just one origin story. Stories of mermaids have been all over the world. The Near East, Europe, Africa, Asia, all over the place. Everybody's got mermaid stories. Everybody. Sometimes the mermaids, they are associated with perilous events like floodings, storms, shipwrecks, drownings, that fun stuff. They're also sometimes depicted as benevolent or beneficial to the people that find them. There was one myth that if you caught a mermaid, she'd have to grant you a wish so you would release her, that kind of thing. Sometimes they are mistaken for or have been influenced by sirens, selkies, and merrows and whatnot. Basically other mermaid-esque creatures. But for the most part, when you think mermaid, you think Ariel from Disney's The Little Mermaid, which we'll get to. Now, obviously, there have also been male mermaids or mermen, which is why the title of this video is Merfolk, because I like to include both. They're a species. It works, okay? Just go with me. Just go with it. Now, they're typically depicted as living under the waves, which means that, unlike most mammals, which I will get to my point on that too, they can breathe underwater. So, that's a bit odd as far as mammals are concerned, but there's an argument that can be made with it. Now, pop culturally, as I said, they've been in everything. You've got countless movies, countless books, countless video games, comics, TV shows. They're everywhere. Everybody loves mermaids. Everybody. Okay, so everybody is familiar with, or at least I assume everyone is familiar with Disney's version of The Little Mermaid, which is very family-friendly. Yeah, that's probably the best way of describing it. However, the original that it's based off of is obviously Hans Christian Andersen's version, The Little Mermaid, which was published in 1837. Unless I read that wrong on my little note there. And it's a much more interesting story because it takes the Little Mermaid and it makes her not human. See, my problem with Ariel in the Disney version is that she's very human. Everything about her, even her moral compass, is very human. Whereas in Hans Christian Andersen's story, she doesn't come across as humanly motivated. She falls in love with the prince, and she sells her voice for legs. Which even the evil witch, she's not actually depicted as an evil witch. She's just a sea witch. She's just regular garden variety. You go to her if you're hurt. She's that kind of thing. Do I agree with a voice for legs? Maybe not. And the fact that the Little Mermaid is in pain for every step she takes is not, as far as I'm concerned, it's not necessarily the fact that the sea witch cursed her, but more the fact that she's literally never used legs before. So that could be more of a warning. Every step you take is going to hurt because you've never used these before, and these are muscles that, again, you've never used before. Especially because she's only given 3 days, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember how long it was in Hans Christensen's book. I know it's 3 days in The Little Mermaid by Disney. And she does that for love. And then the prince is in love with someone else, or he's engaged to someone else, and he ends up marrying that someone else, which her sisters had no problem selling their hair for a dagger to murder the prince so the Little Mermaid could go back into the ocean instead of turning into sea foam and dying and angels and whatnot. Which, when you think about that from a human perspective, that's horrible. But none of the mermaids actually had a problem with this. Now, the Little Mermaid had a problem with it. That's why she couldn't do it, because she loved him so much. But her sisters weren't evil for not having a problem with this. They just wanted their sister to come back into the ocean. You know what I mean? So it's an interesting take on morality. And I like the fact that the morality given in the context makes sense. Mermaids aren't human. They wouldn't have the same human hang-ups as we do. Now, there are a couple other instances of mermaids being depicted in literature that I'm not as familiar with. Shadow over Innismouth is a very interesting take on the whole mermaid thing. Because the deep ones are never explicitly called mermaids. But they're basically mermaids. And the movie that goes along with that is actually called Dagon. Which is interesting because, I mean, it's not technically wrong, but also not right. And because I forgot that's H.P. Lovecraft. Yeah, Lovecraft decided he liked mermaids too. See, everybody loves mermaids. Everybody. Now, obviously, J.K. Rowling covered mermaids as well. Because, yes, they have an entry in here. Now, where J.K. Rowling and I disagree is J.K. Rowling classifies sirens, selkies, and marrows all as merpeople, as though they are, in fact, the same person. Whereas most classical renditions of the siren, they are, in fact, part woman, part bird. So that's where my hang-up on that one is. And I also actually kind of object to the way they're depicted in Goblet of Fire. More so because they aren't your traditional mermaid style. But they aren't really selkies either. I mean, I'm not as familiar with the Merrow, or Merrow, but I know that selkies are actually part person, part seal, and when they shed their skin, they can walk around as a human, and there's legends about that. So I'm not sure where she decided that these are all the same creature. And it's one author's opinion, and obviously I haven't published anything yet, so that's my opinion, is that she's wrong, but that's, again, just my opinion. It just is. Let me think here. Other pop culture things that I've actually... obviously, in DC Comics, you have Aquaman and his entire civilization. That one is a fun one, because none of them have fishtails. None of the merfolk have fishtails, and it's interesting. Well, okay, not none of the merfolk, but most of them have legs, but live underwater. And they have gills, which was a nice touch, because mermaids aren't usually depicted with gills. I have my own theories on that, and we're going to get to it later, but The Avengers, if you go by, because I only actually know most about the Avengers from the video game, it was for Xbox 360. It was Superhero Alliance, I think. I'm really bad. But because there's an entire place where you go and you hang out in the Marvel version of Atlantis with all the cloned fish people, because of course they're all clones. But even they don't have tails. They have legs with fins on the legs, which is kind of cool, actually. I believe that there are countless of video games, obviously, with merfolk in them as well. And for the movies, we've already covered The Little Mermaid. There was also the movie Splash, which I haven't actually seen all the way through, so I can't really talk about it. And all the wonderfulness that is Splash, because there's a whole fan theories and all kinds of shit about Splash. It's depressing, actually. However, one movie that I have seen from start to finish that I have a couple issues with, but for the most part it's okay, is the movie The 13th Year. Now, the reason I have issues with it is because it is about a boy who turns 13 and finds out he's a merman. And because back when he was just a little itty-bitty baby, his mama was being chased, who is a full mermaid, she was being chased by fishermen or something. And she leaves baby in a fisherman's net, and another fisherman, who is not hunting the mermaid, finds the baby and raises him as his son. Now I know what you're thinking. Boy child is a mermaid. Wouldn't they notice he has a tail? Apparently no. They don't get a tail until they're 13. Then they get the fins and stuff. And slimy scales, which, you know, yeah. Not every fish is slimy. But anyway, my only real objection with that is, if that's how it works with the mermaids, then how do mermaids just randomly bring their babies to shore and leave them with humans to raise until they're 13 and then take them back? Like, I don't understand this concept as you've described it, because it doesn't sound like it would ever work out well for anyone involved, especially back in, the medieval times when everybody, you're a witch and all that fun stuff from the Middle Ages, because humans are horrible people. We're just horrible as a species. So that's it for the pop culture references. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's been 13 minutes. Becca, are you really going to give us your thoughts and feelings? Not this video. This is going to be a two-parter. I know, I'm a terrible person, but I warned you this might happen. So, next week, we cover mermaids again. Tune in and for my personal thoughts all together on mermaids and how I've used them in my own stories. Thank you for watching. This is Beck Terry from Mythical Creature Comforts. Like, subscribe if you're new, all that fun stuff. Hit the little bell button, because apparently they don't send notifications unless you hit the actual little bell button. So please, please, guys, hit the bell button, because maybe that's why none of you are watching my videos. I mean, I'm just saying. So no Jar of Doom today, but next week we finish with mermaids and we move on. Next week.